Welcome to our deep dive into the heart of city life. We've got a stack of sources here, from ancient history to cutting-edge sociology,
Okay.
all trying to answer one big question. Does the city shape you, or do you shape the city?
That's a fascinating question.
Right.
It really gets at the core of the urban experience.
Yeah.
That constant interplay between the individual and the environment.
I've always wondered, if my personality is just a product of living in a fast-paced, crowded city, or if I was always like this. And that's why I gravitated toward this life in the first place.
So I have to dig into that for sure.
Yeah.
But first, I think it's interesting to consider just the very word urban. It comes from the Latin urbanus,
Okay.
which actually has roots in urbs, meaning city.
Okay.
But in the deeper, it connects to citizenship through the word civis.
Oh, wow.
It's like right from the start,
Yeah.
there's this idea of belonging woven into the very concept of urban.
So it's not just about buildings and traffic and
Right.
noise and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's actually about how...
It's about identity.
Yeah.
It's about how being a part of a city shapes your identity, like your sense of self.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this a little further.
Okay.
If we're talking about the urban experience, how do we even define what urban is?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that sociologists have been grappling with for centuries.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
For centuries?
I mean, one expert, John Palin,
Okay.
actually pointed out that there are tons of definitions out there,
Okay.
but none of them seem to, fully capture it.
So it's kind of like you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to define.
But pinning down an exact definition,
Yeah.
it's very slippery.
It's slippery, yeah.
And it gets even trickier when we think about how the lines between city and countryside
Okay.
are blurring in today's world.
You mean you could be living in a suburb, out in the
Right.
suburbs, but working in a downtown skyscraper.
Yeah.
Exactly by that urban buzz.
Yes, or miles from any city.
Oh, yeah.
But connected to the world through technology,
Right.
constantly tapping into the pulse of, urban culture.
So interesting.
That's the urban phenomenon.
Urban.
It's this in-between zone where urban and rural characteristics start to blend.
Okay.
It makes you wonder if the old ways of categorizing places
Yeah.
even hold up anymore.
That's so interesting. It's the city's energy is just radiating outward, transforming everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this fuzzy definition of urban.
Okay.
But how did cities as we know them even begin?
To answer that, we need to go back, thousands of years
Okay.
to the dawn of civilization.
Wow.
Yeah. And we'll meet a pioneering archaeologist named Gordon Childe,
Okay.
who coined the term urban revolution.
Urban revolution.
Basically, this is when agricultural villages transformed
Oh,
into those complex, organized urban centers
Right.
we recognize today.
Revolution sounds intense.
Yeah.
What were the signs that this shift was happening?
Well, Childe laid out 10 key criteria for what he considered urban.
Okay.
To simplify, just picture this. Those early cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro
Mm-hmm.
already had populations of around 20,000 people.
Wow.
A huge leap from small farming communities.
Yeah, I mean, 20,000 people crammed together back then.
Yeah, think about it.
I can barely handle rush hour on the metro.
Right?
But seriously,
Yeah.
besides sheer numbers, what else made those early settlements stand out?
Think grand monumental buildings.
Okay.
Those massive Egyptian tombs.
Yeah.
The sprawling granaries of the Harappan civilization.
Wow.
These weren't just about shelter.
Right.
They showed off sophisticated engineering
Yeah.
and the ability to organize huge collaborative projects.
So it was a whole different way of living and working together.
Exactly.
On a scale those farming villages never could.
Exactly. And within those larger populations,
Yeah.
we start to see specialized roles emerging.
Okay.
Not just farmers anymore, but full-time craftspeople, merchants, officials, even priests.
Okay, so starting to sound a lot like our modern cities now.
Right.
Everyone with their own niche, their own hustle.
Yeah, and that specialization fueled another crucial element,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
These early cities became economic hubs,
Yeah.
connected by sprawling trade routes.
Right.
Think of the one linking Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley,
Wow.
globalization in ancient times.
That's amazing, yeah.
Right.
How connected things were even way back then.
Yeah.
But what sparked this whole urban revolution in the first place?
Right.
What was the driving force behind it?
Childs believed it all boiled down to surplus.
Surplus.
When advancements in agriculture allowed people to produce more food
Yeah.
than they needed to survive,
Okay.
things changed.
So extra food means extra time and brain power to create, to innovate. And
That's the gist of it.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
build all these impressive structures.
Now, another fascinating perspective comes from Lewis Mumford,
Okay.
a big name in urban theory.
Okay.
He believed that a city's true defining feature wasn't just size or density,
Okay.
but heterogeneity. That mixing pot of diverse skills and backgrounds and perspectives
Right.
that we see even in the earliest cities.
Like the city is this giant magnet
Yes,
pulling in all these different people and talent.
precisely.
So
But
interesting.
Mumford also warned us
Okay.
about the potential downsides of this
Mm.
implosion, as he called it.
Okay.
You read about overconcentration,
Yeah.
over-reliance on technology, growing inequality,
Right.
all things that could lead to a city's collapse.
Oh, wow.
He even coined the term Thanatopolis,
Thanatopolis.
a city of death consumed by its own excesses.
Wow. That's a...
Kind of dark thought, but
Yeah, a little bit dark, yeah. But it makes you think,
yeah,
right?
it does.
Like, are we creating these mega cities that are ultimately unsustainable?
That's the question, yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting how some of Mumford's anxieties about what he called megatechnics
Okay.
back then
Yeah.
echo some of our concerns about technology today.
Oh, yeah.
Data privacy, automation.
Yeah.
Are we becoming too reliant on tech
Right.
in a way that like dehumanizes us?
It's like he was foreshadowing some of our modern day dilemmas.
Right.
But let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about like the birth of cities,
Yeah.
even their potential downfall.
Right.
Now I'm curious about the psychological impacts.
Okay.
How does living in a city actually change the way we think and feel?
That's where a brilliant sociologist named George Simmel comes in.
Okay.
Mhm.
George Simmel.
He explored how the unique environment of the city
Yeah.
shapes our minds,
Right.
our interactions,
Right.
even our personalities.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the psychology of city life.
Good.
Tell me everything.
Let's go. What makes Simmel's perspective so interesting is that he kind of viewed the city as an outsider. His Jewish background and academic struggles
Oh.
gave him a unique lens, I think,
Yeah.
for observing those social dynamics of urban life,
Right.
especially during a time of like rapid industrialization and commercialization.
So he wasn't just like an academic theorizing from afar.
Right.
He was living and breathing the city,
Exactly.
feeling those pressures firsthand.
Yeah, and he was particularly fascinated by how that constant stimulation and transactional nature of city life affect the individual psyche.
Oh, okay.
He argued that, like, the metropolitan mind develops this distinct set of characteristics
Okay.
shaped by that urban environment.
Okay, so what are some of these telltale signs of a city mind?
Well, one key concept is intellectualization.
Okay.
Simmel believed that city dwellers just become more rational
Uh-huh.
and calculating in their thinking,
Okay.
constantly weighing options,
Right.
making decisions based on logic and efficiency.
That makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
in a city, there are so many choices.
Right.
And so much competition.
You got to be strategic.
Yeah.
You can't get bogged down
Right.
with too much emotion.
You got to be on your toes just to navigate it.
Exactly. And Simmel saw money and the watch
Okay.
as these powerful symbols of this intellectualization.
Oh, interesting.
Money because it reduces everything to, like, a quantifiable value,
Right.
stripping away sentimentality,
Yeah.
and the watch because it represents this constant awareness of time,
Right.
that feeling of always being on the clock.
I can definitely feel that. Like the city is one giant clock
Yeah.
and we're all just racing to keep up.
Yeah, but isn't there also like a slower pace of life to be found
Yeah.
in certain corners of the city?
Yeah, for sure.
How does that fit into Simmel's theory?
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, Simmel was painting a broad picture.
Yeah,
And of course, there are variations and nuances
sure.
within any city,
Of course.
but he was trying to capture that dominant energy,
Right.
that underlying pulse that drives urban life.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was trying to define the spirit of the city, even if
Yeah.
not everyone perfectly embodies it.
exactly.
So what other mental traits did he observe in city dwellers?
Another fascinating, if somewhat unsettling, trait he identified is that blasé attitude.
Okay, the blasé attitude.
It's a kind of indifference,
Okay.
a detachment
Hmm.
from the overwhelming stimuli of the city.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in action?
Well, think about how in crowded cities, people often just seem to ignore beggars or homeless people.
Right.
It's not necessarily because they're heartless.
Right.
It's because they've kind of built up this psychological barrier
Yeah.
to protect themselves from that constant barrage
Hmm.
of sensory input
Yeah.
and emotional appeals.
It's like a defense mechanism, you know? Like you
Right.
let yourself feel everything.
Right.
You'd be so emotionally exhausted
You'd be overwhelmed.
all the time, yeah.
But that detachment can lead to a sense of isolation and
Yeah.
alienation,
Right.
this loss of genuine connection.
Interesting.
Simmel also noted
Yeah.
that city dwellers tend to be more reserved, maybe even a little suspicious of others.
Makes sense, yeah.
Again, it's a way of navigating an environment where
Right.
you're constantly surrounded by strangers.
You're less likely to strike up a conversation with the person next to you on the bus.
Right.
Or go out of your way to help someone who looks lost.
Yeah, it's like everyone's in their own little bubble.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And that can contribute to a sense of anonymity,
Wow.
even in a city teeming with millions of people.
So it's like a trade-off, you know?
Exactly.
The city offers all this excitement,
Yeah.
opportunity,
Right.
but also this is potential for
Isolation.
and detachment.
Detachment, yeah.
Yeah.
But Simmel also saw a positive flip side to this.
Okay.
He argued that this detachment also allows for greater individuality,
Okay.
freedom to pursue your own interests and passions
Yeah.
without the constraints of traditional social norms and expectations.
Because you're not bound by the judgment of like a close-knit community.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
The city, with its diverse subcultures and endless opportunities,
Right.
becomes a place where you can truly carve out your own unique niche.
It's fascinating, this whole idea of like shaping the city
Yeah.
and being shaped by it.
It's a paradox.
Yeah, a paradox.
Okay, so we've got Simmel's take on the metropolitan mind.
Right.
Who else should we add to the mix?
Yeah, who else?
Building on Simmel's ideas.
Okay.
Another influential figure in urban sociology is Louis Wirth.
Okay.
I really took this concept of urbanism as a way of life and just ran with it.
So Worth was saying that city living isn't just about location.
Right.
It's a whole different way of experiencing the world, a fundamental shift in your outlook.
Exactly. Wirth, who was part of the famous Chicago School of Sociology,
Okay.
believed that the city is like a social organism,
Hmm.
a complex system with its own unique characteristics.
Interesting.
He argued that three key factors, size, density, and heterogeneity,
Yeah.
are what shape that urban experience.
We've heard those terms before.
Yeah.
But how did Worth see them playing out in real life?
Well, take heterogeneity, for example.
Okay.
Remember Mumford's idea that the city is this melting pot of cultures and perspectives?
Right, yeah.
Wirth saw this as like a double-edged sword.
In what way?
On the one hand, it creates that vibrant mix
Yeah.
of cultures and ideas and lifestyles that draws so many people to cities.
Right.
But it can also lead to conflict and social divisions. Think about the tensions that can arise between different ethnic or religious groups,
Right.
competing for resources and space.
That saying, familiarity breeds contempt, comes to mind.
Yes.
You know, forced into close proximity with people who are different from you,
Right.
it's bound to create some friction.
Exactly. And then there's density.
Okay.
Again, there are pluses and minuses.
Okay.
On the one hand, density can foster creativity and innovation.
Hmm.
All those minds packed together, bouncing ideas off each other.
Right.
But it also intensifies competition for everything.
Yeah.
Housing, jobs,
Right.
even just a quiet moment to yourself.
Yeah, you can really see that playing out in the real estate market.
Right.
You know, like the price per square foot
Yeah.
in a packed slum, like
Yeah.
Dharavi compared to a sprawling tech hub like Whitefield. It's night and day.
Scarcity of space drives up prices
Yeah,
and shapes that entire urban landscape.
it's so true.
And then there's the sheer size of the city.
Yeah.
Wirth believed this leads to a shift from primary relationships,
Okay.
those close-knit family and community ties,
Yeah.
to more secondary transactional relationships.
Because you're interacting with so many people on such a superficial level,
Right.
you don't have the time or energy to invest in those deep, meaningful connections with everyone.
Yeah.
Right, you rely more on like institutions and specialized services to meet your needs
Right.
rather than your immediate social circle.
It's important to note, though,
Okay.
that Wirth's theories,
Yeah.
while groundbreaking,
Yeah.
have been challenged,
Okay.
especially in like non-Western societies.
You mean like here in India,
Precisely.
where family and community ties often remain strong,
Yeah.
even in these bustling megacities?
Wirth's model was developed in the context of American cities.
Yeah.
It doesn't always capture the complexities of urban life in places
Right.
where those traditional social structures hasn't been completely eroded.
So it's more nuanced than just assuming that
Right.
everyone in a city is isolated and disconnected.
Exactly.
It depends on the cultural context.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got size, density, heterogeneity.
Right.
What other concepts can help us understand
Okay.
how communities actually function within these urban ecosystems?
To delve deeper into the idea of community and society,
Okay.
let's bring in Ferdinand Tönnies
Okay.
and his contrasting concepts of Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft.
Those are some seriously German-sounding words.
I know, right?
Break them down for me.
Think of them as these ideal types,
Okay.
representing different forms of social organization.
Got it.
Gemeinschaft often translated as community. It's all about close-knit relationships, shared values, this strong sense of tradition.
Right.
It's that social fabric you might find in a small village
Yeah.
where everyone knows each other.
Right.
And life revolves around family and shared customs.
It's like that warm, fuzzy feeling of belonging, like everyone's part of one big extended family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as societies modernize and urbanize,
Right.
they tend to shift towards Gesellschaft,
Gesellschaft.
which is more like society in the modern sense.
Okay.
It's characterized by individualism,
Okay.
contractual relationships, this focus on achieving personal goals.
So it's less about heartfelt connections and more about like practical transactions.
Right.
Individual ambition.
And this shift from Gemeinschaft to Gesellschaft
Yeah.
often coincides with a decline
Right.
in those traditional social bonds
Yeah.
and the rise of like a more impersonal,
Right.
bureaucratic way of life.
So where do you see yourself on that spectrum? Do you feel more of a Gemeinschaft or a Gesellschaft vibe in your daily life?
That's a good question.
How about your city? Does it encourage one over the other?
Interesting questions to ponder.
Yeah.
Tunney's also explored the concepts of Kerwill and Wessenwill.
More German words.
I know, right?
I'm sensing a pattern here.
Don't worry, I'll keep it simple.
Okay.
Kerwill is the rational will.
Okay.
Think calculated decision-making, achieving specific goals.
Okay.
It's that driving force behind, like, modern capitalism
Right.
and the pursuit of individual success.
Okay, got it.
Wessenwill is the natural will,
Okay.
rooted in instinct, emotion, tradition.
Okay.
It guides actions based on, like, shared values and this sense of belonging.
So Kerwill is the head
Yeah,
and Wessenwill is the heart.
that's a great way to put it.
I like that.
As societies move towards Gesellschaft,
Yeah.
that Kerwill tends to become dominant,
Okay.
shaping everything from economic systems to our everyday interactions.
It's fascinating how these seemingly abstract concepts
Right.
can actually help us understand like the bigger social forces
Yeah.
that are shaping our cities.
It is fascinating.
But let's zoom back in on the city itself.
Okay.
How do sociologists view the spatial dynamics of urban life? You know, how
Yeah.
people and places interact within the city.
That's where the ecological perspective comes in.
Okay.
It views cities as these like dynamic systems, constantly evolving and adapting through the interplay of human behavior
Right.
and the built environment.
So they were studying the city like it was a natural ecosystem.
Precisely.
Oh, wow.
And the Chicago School, which we touched on earlier,
Right.
was like a major force in developing urban ecology.
Okay.
One of their key figures, Robert Park,
Okay.
even coined the term human ecology
Okay.
to describe this approach.
Okay, so what were some of the key ideas that emerged from this human ecology perspective?
Well, one of Park's central arguments
Yeah.
was that, just like in nature, there's this constant struggle
Right.
for survival and dominance
Oh, wow.
in the urban jungle.
Survival of the fittest city style.
Exactly.
I love it.
And this competition plays out in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
Allocation of resources, control of territory,
Right.
the establishment of social hierarchies.
It's like we see it in how different groups claim space
Yeah.
and stake their claim within the city.
Precisely. Now, one key concept within urban ecology
Okay.
is succession.
Succession. Okay.
This describes how different groups
Okay.
and land uses gradually replace each other over time.
Can you give me like a real world example of how that works?
Think about, like, the historical evolution of a neighborhood.
Okay.
It might start as a quiet residential area,
Yeah.
but gradually transform into a bustling commercial district
Right.
as businesses move in
Right.
and residents are twisted out.
Yeah.
Or consider the ongoing redevelopment of Dharavi,
Well,
one
what
of
if-
Mumbai's largest slums.
Right.
As developers and government agencies push for modernization,
Yeah.
the traditional residents face displacement
Wow.
and a struggle to maintain their way of life.
It's like a constant push and pull.
Yes.
Different forces shaping and reshaping the urban landscape.
Now, another interesting concept
Okay.
is symbiosis.
Symbiosis. Okay.
It describes how seemingly competing groups
Yeah.
can actually become interdependent,
Oh, interesting.
forming a complex web of relationships that keep the city functioning.
So it's not always about cutthroat competition.
Right.
There's also cooperation.
Yes,
And a kind of balance of power.
exactly. A great example is the recycling industry in Dharavi.
Okay.
Those who collect and process waste materials
Yeah.
play a vital role in the city's waste management system.
Right.
It's a symbiotic relationship between that informal economy of the slum,
Yeah.
and the official systems of the city.
Competition, succession, symbiosis.
Yeah.
It really is like an ecosystem with all these different parts interacting and influencing each other.
Yeah.
But what about those spaces outside the traditional city center?
Okay.
How do the suburbs look into this whole urban picture?
Sure, the suburbs.
Yeah.
They actually present this fascinating challenge to that traditional view
Okay.
of the city as inherently disorganized and alienating.
Right. Suburbs are often seen as the antithesis of city life.
Right.
You know, quiet, homogeneous, family-oriented.
Right.
Do they defy these urban theories we've been discussing?
Well, after World War II,
Okay.
as cities expanded outward,
Yeah.
a new breed of sociologists,
Okay.
known as compositional theorists,
Compositional theorists.
emerged.
Okay, tell me more about them.
They argued that strong social ties and community life could persist. Okay, even in suburban settings?
So it wasn't just cookie-cutter houses and white picket fences.
Exactly.
There was real social depths beneath the surface.
Yes, one of the key figures in compositional theory
Okay.
is Herbert Gans,
Okay.
who conducted groundbreaking research on inner-city neighborhoods. He challenged the notion that urban life inevitably leads to social breakdown.
Wow.
He argued that people find ways to create community and meaning, even in challenging environments.
So it's not just about location,
Right.
but the composition of the community,
how
the
you-
types of people who live there.
Gans developed this fascinating typology
Okay.
of inner-city residents,
Yeah.
highlighting that diversity of experiences and social worlds
Okay.
that coexist within the urban fabric.
I like that.
For example, he identified cosmopolites,
Cosmopolites.
artists, intellectuals, professionals
Uh-huh.
who are drawn to the city's energy and cultural offerings.
They're the ones who thrive on that urban buzz. Yeah.
Yeah, then you have the ethnic villagers,
Okay, ethnic villagers.
who are communities that maintain strong cultural identities
Okay.
and close-knit bonds, even within the larger city.
Okay.
Think about enclaves like Little Italy or Chinatown.
Oh, yeah.
They create a sense of belonging and continuity within the urban landscape.
It's like having a piece of their homeland right in the heart of the city.
Yes.
A way to hold on to their traditions and language
Right.
in this new environment.
Exactly. But bands also acknowledge the struggles of those who are trapped
Right.
or downwardly mobile in the city,
Right.
often facing poverty,
Yeah.
discrimination, and limited opportunity.
Of course.
His work reminds us
Yeah.
that urban experience is not monolithic.
Yeah.
It's a tapestry of diverse social realities.
It's a city within a city.
Yes.
Each with its own unique character and challenges.
But what about those groups that don't fit neatly into these categories?
Okay.
The ones who create their own spaces and identities within the city,
Right.
pushing the boundaries of what's considered normal.
Yeah, I mean, subcultures.
Yeah, subculture.
You mean like goths, punks, hipsters?
Those are classic examples.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just fashion and music.
Right.
Subcultures can form around any shared interest
Right.
or ideology,
Okay.
offering a sense of belonging and identity
Uh-huh.
that might not be found in mainstream society.
Okay, so how do cities influence the formation
Yeah.
and development of subcultures?
Well, a sociologist named Claude Fisher
Okay.
built on the work of compositional theorists
Okay.
and developed what's known as the subcultural theory of urbanism.
The subcultural theory of urbanism. Okay.
He argued that urban environments actually foster the creation and intensification of subcultures.
So cities aren't just melting pots of different cultures.
Right.
They're also breeding grounds for these unique, often rebellious subgroups.
Exactly. Fisher believed the diversity, anonymity,
Yeah.
and critical mass of cities
Okay.
create spaces where people can find like-minded individuals, form communities,
Yeah.
and express their unique identities without the constraints of traditional social norms.
So you're more likely to find your tribe, so to speak, in a city
Exactly.
where there are just more people and more possibilities.
Precisely. And once a subculture reaches a certain size,
Yeah.
that critical mass,
Okay.
they can create their own institutions,
Wow.
support networks, even their own economies,
Wow.
solidifying their presence within the larger urban fabric.
It's like a mini society
Yeah.
within the city with its own rules and rituals and
Yeah.
ways of being.
Now, another fascinating concept that emerges from studying subcultures
Okay.
is community without locality.
Community without locality. That sounds intriguing. Explain.
It's the idea that, thanks to technology,
Okay.
people can now form communities
Yeah.
and connect with like-minded individuals,
Right.
regardless of where they physically live.
Right.
Think about, like, online forums, social media groups,
Yeah.
even just shared interests that bring people together virtually.
So the internet has created this whole new dimension of urban life.
Yes.
One that transcends geographical boundaries.
Exactly. And this has profound implications for how we understand community
Yeah.
and belonging in the 21st century.
Right.
It challenges that traditional notion
Yeah.
that you need to live in close proximity
Right.
to form meaningful connections.
It's like the city has expanded beyond its physical limits.
Yes.
Creating this global network of interconnected communities.
Yeah.
So are we moving towards a future where physical location becomes less and less relevant?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
And one that's still unfolding.
Right.
But it certainly makes you wonder
Yeah.
how these virtual connections are reshaping our relationship with the physical city.
It's almost like we have these two parallel urban experiences now.
Right.
The physical city,
Yeah.
we navigate every day.
Yeah.
And this virtual city that
Oh.
exists in the digital realm.
Exactly.
So much to think about.
I know. It's mind-blowing.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Oh, right.
From the birth of cities to the psychology of city dwellers,
Yeah.
from like the dynamics of urban ecosystems to the rise of subcultures and virtual communities.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's amazing how all these different theories
Right.
like connect and overlap,
Yeah.
painting such a rich picture of urban life.
It's like we've been assembling this giant jigsaw puzzle,
Uh-huh.
each piece representing a different perspective on the city.
Right.
And what's striking is how many of these theories, even those developed decades ago,
Yeah.
still resonate so strongly with the challenges
Yeah.
and opportunities we face in our modern urban landscape.
Totally. Like Simmel's observations about the blasé attitude,
Uh-huh.
Worth's emphasis on density and heterogeneity,
Right?
Tunney's contrast between Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. Yeah, they all offer valuable insights into the complexities of city living today.
It's true, but it's not just about understanding these concepts, right?
Right.
It's about how we can actually use them to create better cities.
For the future.
Yeah, for the future.
Okay.
And that's where I think the subcultural theory
Mm.
and the concept of community with locality
Right.
offer particularly exciting possibilities.
Okay.
As our world becomes increasingly urbanized,
Yeah.
we need to find ways to foster both individual fulfillment
Right.
and that sense of belonging,
Yeah.
understanding how subcultures thrive,
Right.
how technology can connect people across geographical boundaries,
Yeah.
can help us create
Yeah.
more inclusive, vibrant,
Yeah.
and ultimately more human cities.
It's like we need to find that sweet spot, that balance.
Yeah.
Between the close-knit bonds of Gemeinschaft
Right.
and the dynamic energy of Gesellschaft,
Exactly.
all while embracing the diversity and innovation that subcultures bring.
It's a challenge. That requires not just sociological insights,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but creative thinking,
Yeah,
collaboration,
right.
and a willingness to experiment.
You know, we need to remember that cities are constantly evolving.
Yes.
And our understanding of them needs to evolve as well.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for you as you
Yeah.
navigate your own urban landscape?
Mm.
Think about which of these theories resonate with your experience.
Yeah,
Do you feel that pull between individual freedom
right.
and the desire for community?
Mm.
Do you see those power dynamics playing out in your neighborhood?
Right.
Those examples of competition,
Yeah.
succession, and symbiosis?
Yeah,
And how is technology shaping your sense of belonging,
right.
your connection to both your physical city
Mm.
and your virtual communities?
Those are great questions to reflect on.
And as you do,
Yeah.
remember that you're not just a passive observer
Right.
in this urban ecosystem.
Yeah,
You have the power to shape your city,
right.
to contribute to its evolution.
So whether it's supporting local businesses,
Yeah.
engaging in community initiatives,
Right.
or simply like striking up a conversation with your neighbor,
Yeah,
there
exactly.
are countless ways to make your mark on the urban fabric.
Exactly. And as our world becomes increasingly interconnected,
Right.
those small everyday actions
Yeah.
can have this ripple effect,
Right.
contributing to a more vibrant,
Right.
equitable, and fulfilling urban experience for everyone.
Well, this has been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I feel like I've learned so much about the city
Yeah,
and about myself in the process.
me too.
But as always,
Yep.
we want to leave you with something to ponder,
Okay.
a question to spark further exploration.
In an age where technology can connect us instantly with people across the globe,
Yeah,
how can we also strengthen the bonds of community within our own cities?
that's a good question.
How can we create spaces that foster genuine connection,
Right.
empathy, and a sense of shared purpose?
It's like that old African proverb, it takes a village.
Yes?
Even in our hyper-connected world,
Right.
we still crave that sense of local belonging,
Yeah.
of shared roots and shared responsibility.
Precisely. So as you navigate your urban jungle,
Yeah.
keep your eyes open
Right.
for those opportunities to connect,
Yeah.
to contribute,
Right.
and to help shape the future of your city.
I love that.
And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a new subculture or two along the way.
Right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into urban life.
Until next time.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning and keep building the cities of tomorrow. But there are ones who just watch the cities of tomorrow with their survey